And at that day, little did I know that I would turn my history into my future and my pain into my purpose. And from that day, I have been sober ever since.
Welcome to the Juggling the Chaos of Recovery podcast, where we focus on health and wellness and overcoming all types of addictions. You're in the right place if you're a mom, dad, sibling, or caregiver who has a loved one who is or was struggling with an eating disorder or any other kind of addiction. In a time where everything seems heavy, I'm here to bring you a very real, yet lighthearted take on what the heck we're all supposed to do with our lives while we care for our loved ones who are struggling. One thing holds true throughout it all. You can't juggle the chaos without smiling. At least a little bit. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm your host, Moira Gorski. So glad you are here. There are days that you'll hear me by myself, and there's so many days that I bring a guest on, and today is one of those days where I bring a guest on, and us podcasters and people that have a message to share find each other, I guess I would say, on different venues like Clubhouse or a place called matchmaker.fm or referring from a friend. And Justin, my guest today, Justin Brien, I think we found each other on matchmaker.fm, which is kind of like a Tinder for podcasters. What should I tell people? Again, I really appreciated connecting there because Justin has a great story, which all of my guests have great stories. But as a result of what he went through, he is now helping others, which again, so many people have done that. And I think those are the people that should do it because, as Justin says, he's a mental health advocate, inspirational speaker, and professional executive coach. He's a hockey player from Canada. So I have a dear place in my heart for hockey players because my 3 boys have played hockey, and I was a hockey mom for 17 seasons. But anyway, however, to put those things behind or in front of his name, he went through a 6-year-long battle with suicidal thoughts, 16-year battle with addiction, and almost a lifetime of depression. He credits finding his way and reaching out for help. Finding his why and reaching out for help helped him on his path to recovery and inspiring others to become their strongest versions. So, Justin, thank you for joining me today. I'm thrilled you're here.
Hey, thanks for having me. And yeah, I am Canadian, so I'm pretty sure most of us play hockey.
Yeah, right. There's places like Canada, you put hockey, just about when you can walk, you put the skates on. I started taking ballroom dance lessons last August, and the people that I train with are from Moldova and the Ukraine. When they can start to walk, they put their dancing shoes on, Yeah. And again, hockey's a great sport, but I think we're going to talk a little bit about some of the, results or injuries with hockey that might have led to some mental health struggles. So we're going to get right into it here. And so, as I always say, let's get started hearing your story. Not all the details, but just really kind of what happened along the way with your life and kind of how it, again, we're going to talk about how you found help and talk about support and things like that, but just really how your journey, your story led you to where you're at today. Well, in just, a couple of minutes.
Yeah, no problem. I can do that because it is a very long story because I have lived quite the life of experiences and things that people don't want to see. People would never want to be a part of and witness themselves. But you know what? At 30 years old, I was diagnosed with clinical depression, which is a sadness that can last every day, all day, social and general anxiety, ADHD, and as you're saying, I had concussions from some sports, right? Now you mix all that up, then you pair it with coping with drugs and alcohol. It's just a recipe for disaster. But now that I know a lot more about mental health, I can see where it started to transpire as a kid. As a kid, I had low self-esteem, low self-confidence, low self-worth, and I always compared myself to other people. One of the big things was I was behind my friends in sports. I wasn't as good as an athlete as them, and that really crushed me watching my friends go off. And but I was smaller than everybody. I was weaker than everybody, and I didn't hit puberty till grade 11. I was picked on a bit by. But, it was a different kind of pick on. It was friends picking on me. But, it kind of just made me reiterate it made me think, I'm not that cool, or I'm not that guy. And I had no reason to think that, but, my nickname was Gay growing up. And, I was a pretty outspoken and outgoing guy. And, I tried to show off because I wanted people to like me so bad. And then that nickname kind of stuck with me, and it made me question everything about myself. So growing up, I compared myself, I questioned myself, and I always wanted to be other people. Now, when I got out of high school, I finally found alcohol. I mean, I drank a little bit in high school, but like nothing major, I might have got drunk a handful of times, but like didn't really drink, didn't appeal to me. But when I got out of high school, I moved out on my own, went to move away to play hockey. I found alcohol, and what did it do? It gave me that false sense of confidence, that false sense of security. I thought it made me Superman, like Super Justin. And then once I was finished, and the sad thing was I was drinking too much. I was drinking after games. I was drinking sometimes before games. In one game I played kind of drunk, and another guy, he's like, "Hey man, I can smell liquor on your breath." And it was like, yeah, well, I was drinking all day. And my hockey career ended. I didn't try. I didn't care. I was in such a bad mindset. I wasn't my best version, definitely. And then after that, I moved to Vancouver, 21 years old, started bartending and drinking every day, going out every night, getting as drunk as I can after work, coming home, drinking even more. And then at 24 years old, I graduated, to cocaine use. And, and I didn't remember using it, but my buddy said something to me that stuck with me and kind of triggered me. And it was the worst thing he probably could have said to me. And what he said was, "Man, you were funny." Now, a lot of people are going to be like, "Oh, that's not bad." Well, for a guy like me who uses alcohol as a crutch, it was awful, because now I have two crutches. Okay, well, I had an algorithm for drinking, so I can have this many drinks before I go to the bar, this many drinks to talk to that girl, to go on the dance floor. Now I also have cocaine, and that's going to make me even better Justin, the talkative Justin. I'm going to come out of my shell. So at 24 years old, I'm quickly I am an addict, alcohol and drugs. And I finally questioned myself because another bartender asked me about it. And I quickly said, no, I dismissed it. This is exactly what I said. I'm too smart to be an alcoholic. Alcoholics are lowlifes. Alcoholism is, not normal, and I'm too smart. I'm 24 years old. I can't be one. 6 months down the road, I'm driving. I know exactly where I'm driving, down a straight stretch with a buddy of mine, and the topic of depression comes up. And then we start talking, and I straight up looked at him like, you know what? Depression, it's for the weak. It's an excuse. Got to man up, go to work, pay your bills. And so at 24 years old, I'm a complete addict. I'm dismissing depression. And what were my two biggest vices? Addiction and my mental health. So at 24 years old, starts me down this downward spiral. And then it just, it kind of went downward from there to, I woke up one day, my wrists were cut. I had a knife in my bed. There was blood in there, and I'm very lucky to be alive because I don't remember doing it. I ended up becoming an organ donor, got milk thistle for my livers and kidney flush for my kidneys, so I could, eat healthy and prepare my body to go, because someone deserved it more than I did. And then I was dating this girl at the time, and we ended up breaking up because I was just a mess. We ended up hooking up 9 months later. She phones me 3 months after that. I'm pregnant. I'm like, okay, well, I got to get my stuff together. And did I? No, I didn't. I got in a car accident, went to rehab, got out of rehab. I started drinking again. 6 months later, she has to make the decision to, pick up and leave with our son. She still loved me, but I wasn't a good environment to be around. I mean, it wasn't abusive, but definitely wasn't good for a kid. And then that happened. I started going down again. I got in the hospital with alcohol poisoning. My son looked at me, and because when she brought him in, he's like, "What's wrong with Daddy?" And I was like, "Hey, I'm better off. He's better off without me." Very, very lucky though. At around that same time, I started listening to motivational speaking and on YouTube, and it was guys like, who I had no idea who they are. I definitely know who they are now. Is Eric Thomas, Inky Johnson, Les Brown, and Trent Shelton. And they all started talking about finding your why. So I started to question myself. Well, Justin, what is your why? Well, what if it's that little boy? And I know a lot of people are going to say, do it for yourself. Well, I know a lot of people that couldn't, like guys in rehab, they were there for their families. They're like, oh, they're going for the wrong reasons. No, they're there. At least they're there. But when you're hopeless and you don't see an end, you got to figure it out. You got to find a why that's going to motivate you, inspire you to, get yourself better. And I made it my son. I'm like, I'm going to get better for him, because if I get better for him, I get better for me. If I get better for me, I can help other people. So I went back to rehab, but instead of, I'm going to quit drinking, I went with the power of why. Why do I drink? Well, I'm depressed. Why am I depressed? Well, I have low self-worth, low self-esteem, low self-confidence. Well, why do I feel like that? Well, I never thought I was good enough. But the biggest thing is I never learned how to talk about it. So the biggest thing that I learned to do was ask for help when you're struggling, and then I got out of rehab. I had everything, the bull by the horns. 3 months later, go back down that rabbit hole again. I like to tell people that you don't choose addiction. However, you choose to stay in addiction. The hardest part of addiction isn't quitting, but it's living in sobriety. So for me, the hardest thing to do was live life sober, because for 16 years, I used it for conversations, used it to talk to people, used it to leave my house, used it to play even sports. So here I am having to figure it out in a sober lifestyle, and it was hard. And then all those unwanted thoughts came back. And then finally on January 4th, I go to my mom, I'm like, hey, listen, you need to take me to the hospital. She's like, why? I'm like, can you just take me? She's like, okay. So finally she takes me to the hospital, and on January 4th, 2019, I had my dad to my left, my mom in front of me, a counselor to the right. And I finally admitted out loud that, hey, I had a plan. That plan was to end it. And after that day, little did I know that I would turn my history into my future, and my pain into my purpose. And from that day, I have been sober ever since. I've created my own personal development program. I've spoken to over 500 people on mental health and addiction. There was a time where I was staring at the back of my kid's head when I was broken up with my girlfriend, and I was like, am I going to make it? And I was crying, and I'm just looking at the back of his head. Am I going to make it to see him score a goal? Teach him how to ride a bike, see him graduate or even get married? And the answer was no, right? Because I thought he was better off without me. If I took my own life, that he would find a father that was good for him. But since I made all those changes, this year I'm back together with my girlfriend. We actually have another one on the way in September, a baby girl. And another thing is I actually got to coach my kid in hockey this year. I got his first ever goal. I got to coach him in baseball. I get to coach him in soccer. I didn't want to coach him in soccer because I just want to have one sport where I can sit back and watch. But there's no other parents wanting to volunteer. So I'm like, okay, I'll do it. Because I was kind of like an all-around athlete. But I got to be able to do all those things in that short period of time that I've been sober.
Mm-hmm. Well, congratulations on making that decision and staying sober. There's so many things that I want to talk about with this, but again, I've heard this so many times, similar parts of the story. And, I often wonder, although again, you kind of said it, what is that thing that helps to change the trajectory of your life? Sometimes it's faith. Sometimes it's somebody that says something, like a friend that said, the right thing or the wrong thing. But again, you're doing recovery for somebody else, and that got you better for them, but it also got you better, for yourself.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's funny because you do it for somebody else, but essentially you're doing it for yourself, because that person that you're doing it for means you're going to get to see them more, which means you're going to be healthy. Mm-hmm. So it's essentially, it comes back on you. And it's funny how it works that way, because it essentially really is for you. But right. It's really hard to love yourself when you see no end. When for me, the hardest thing was the guilt and the shame. Like, I felt guilty for being depressed because mm-hmm. I knew my capabilities. Like, I got good grades in high school. People liked me. I'm funny. I have a good family. I felt bad for feeling bad. And so I wanted to donate my body. And when you get into that, where the guilt and the shame, Brene Brown talks about it, the difference between guilt and shame is guilt is you did something bad. Shame is you are bad. And I made some really poor decisions when I was drinking, and, but those are decisions I made. Right. Mm-hmm. And I knew every time that I picked up that drug, or if I picked up that bottle, I would miss times with my son. I would miss times at work who, were there to help me along the way and talk to me, lend an ear. And So that guilt and shame really crept in. It was very hard to get over that. Like, and I still can, it's very important to forgive your past and accept it. But I mean, I can still, now that I'm sober, I can have those times where I'm just like, a thought will creep in. I'm like, oh man, I can't believe I kind of did that. Right. Mm-hmm. But you got to get over it, because if you live in your past, you can't really create your future.
Right. Well, and it lasted for many years, as you said. So, it becomes your identity. And like, you don't, even though you knew in your head that you're a smart kid, you're a funny kid, you've got a great head on your shoulder, but your behaviors are showing you, year after year, a different story than that.
Yeah, so I had a great head on my shoulder. I just didn't know how to use it.
Right. Exactly. Well, and I remember one of my son's hockey coaches who, I don't know if he was from Canada or not. And that's not the most important thing, but he did go off and play. He went off to live with another family, when he was in high school, which it sounded like perhaps you did too. And I forget what they're called, but billets, right. So he left his family, and I remember him saying that, like, all of a sudden he grew up. Like, he's on the bus, they're throwing the beers around, like, all of a sudden, like, he's 16 years old and he has to grow up, he gets put into this adult grown up world. And he said, it wasn't the best thing for a 16, 17-year-old kid. I mean, he said, I wanted to play hockey, but there was things that all of a sudden I saw that I really shouldn't have seen or been exposed to at that age.
Well, you know what, I was for my first 2 years of junior hockey, I was a good billet. My last year though, I was a mess, and I kind of took advantage of my billet family. Like, I took their vehicle once, and I was drinking and driving, and I just kind of bent the rim and broke the review mirror, and I was loud and had people over, and it's just very disrespectful. But that's not the real me. But I wasn't a very good billet, and I didn't grow up. I made really bad choices, and it's something I have to live with. As some people, it's all perspective. Some people do that and they grow up. Some people, I just went down. Like, I honestly, that same year, I wanted to quit, when I even went and saw a doctor, like, because I wanted to quit the team, but they didn't want me to quit the team. He's one of the best players. So I even went and saw doctors. My head wasn't there. All my head was addiction. I just, when can I get that next drink? When can I get it? And it's such a weird feeling when you crave something so bad that you do whatever you can to get it. Mm-hmm. You have to lie, steal, cheat, right, just to get drunk or get high. It's a crazy feeling.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you ever it's not on the little notes here, but did you ever heard of anything called cranial sacral therapy?
I have not.
Yeah. Well, that's it's an alternative kind of treatment, if you will. I don't think I've had an expert talk about that, but I have a really good friend who, when my boys were playing hockey, it's a form of, so let's see if you understand like chiropractic, when you go to a chiropractor and they do an adjustment, it's kind of adjusting your bones and your joints and things like that, so that there aren't those restrictions, if you will. And so craniosacral therapy is the same type of concept in that it works with the craniosacral fluid from your cranium to your sacrum. And it's just like a hands-on, like they can just feel somehow with their hands, they can feel the restrictions and the blockages and things like that. And as a result of that, it really helps with inflammation of the brain. And it's studied as a scientific method and things like that. And I learned about it through my girlfriend, who then I introduced to my boys, and they saw the impact of it so much or the effect of it, that if they got knocked around or had a significant concussion, they're like, can we go to see Carol? Because it really, really helped to pull down the inflammation. So it helped to speed the healing of the concussions. And she's really passionate about that. And it was interesting. I took one of my boys to a sports medicine doc for something else, not even a concussion, but he had an L4-5 stress fracture.
Yeah.
And got thrown into the boards. And again, we're a little off topic here, but the point is I went to took him to see him. And then I said, hey, what do you guys recommend for concussions? And he said, that was the first thing: cranial sacral therapy, magnesium, omega-3s to feed the brain and things like that. And so it was really something that I tell people about, just because it really helped my kids. And again, it's helped so many people, just help to to heal the brain, because it really gets knocked around, like, hockey, football, even soccer. I mean, people that get concussions, I mean, it can be any type of athlete but it was something that was really, really helpful for my boys.
Yeah. Well, I take fish oils. I have one with DHA. I also take GABA. What else do I take? I take a B complex with like rhodiola and stuff like that, and ginseng. CoQ10 for your heart health, and vitamin C. And I take it's a natural testosterone booster, which is basically magnesium and zinc.
Yeah, that's good.
That's good. That noggin, because I find it, as a coach, I find it very hard to focus. I mean, I've been able to coach, but like learning and stuff, like in high school, I didn't have a problem with learning. Now it's, I've done all these courses. I'm not doing as well as I used to do. I find it very hard to concentrate. So I'm trying to figure out a way I can do it natural, because I've tried 8 different medications from bipolar because of my severe depression. I'm not bipolar, but it's for severe depression. ADHD, I've tried a couple things, anxiety pills, and I just didn't like how they made me feel. I've tried antidepressants. Now, that being said, I'm not on medications now, but they helped, like the antidepressants and bipolar med helped me a lot, tremendously. And the only reason I went off of it was so we could have another child, and I didn't want to be on meds while I was trying. And I've been off meds ever since, and I've been doing okay. But if I ever feel like I'm slipping and I can't handle it with a natural lifestyle, I'd go back on meds in a heartbeat, because I do not one of those pill shamers at all. It's just right now I don't feel like I need them, but if I do, I would go back on them. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't know if you know this, but I'm a retired nurse. And so I have a nursing background, and then I've been in the wellness space for 21 years. So been on both sides of things. And I'm the same way. I'm not like, if medications can be so helpful if you find the right ones. And sometimes it takes a lot of experimenting. And there's also some natural supplements that can really help. And of late, and I've got to find somebody that I can bring on to talk about this, because I've been learning about amino acids like GABA and other, tryptophan, like all these other things. And again, it's a long story, but I got connected with somebody and talking with her just for myself. And she's, and I'll put this out there for my guests and also for you. You may be interested in that, because there's a gal out of California named Julia Ross. And she has a couple of books, one called the Craving Cure, the Mood Cure, and the Diet Cure. And it's all about helping to balance the brain chemistry with those amino acids. And it's fascinating. And it's working, because again, this isn't about me, but I bring this up because we're kind of talking about brain health a little bit here, and addictions, because as I'm learning about this amino acid therapy, I'm learning that it's been used to help people decrease their cravings, and not just, cravings because they're overweight, but cravings and addictions and things like that. And it's fascinating. And I was trying some myself just for my own mood. I mean, I feel pretty good most days, but my daughter still struggles. I still have some struggles with my family, and that sometimes gets me down. And so I'm always okay, I'll just try something different. I'll try something different. And maybe I should have an antidepressant, or maybe, and this just kind of came across my desk, if you will. And I've been using them for about 3 weeks, and I can feel a difference just in that level of mood, and I'm sleeping, I wasn't sleeping and things like that. So it's really pretty cool. And
life is an experiment, right? Yeah. And, in the mental health space and depression, not one thing is going to work for everybody.
Right. And and I feel like I always tell people in my wellness business, or even in this, it's like, just be open to whatever comes your way, just listen to it, because maybe it is something that could help you. Maybe it's something that, could be different than what you've tried, that could be helpful. And you talk about that, the tools that you have kind of developed that, and we talk about this on this podcast, like, find some tools that you can put in your tool belt, so that when things get tough, when you've having a rough day, what you can grab onto as a tool. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, really kind of what you are kind of relying on to keep you going, besides, your family and the future there?
Well, the biggest thing I can say to people is give yourself some grace. give yourself some grace to be human. Not everybody, most people don't have life figured out. It's the people that ask for help. You try to do it yourself, but it's people that ask for help that really get further in life. And, I started doing gratitude, doing 3 things I was grateful for in the morning. I was journaling my feelings at night. I was listening to podcasts of guys like me who struggled and are showing their vulnerability. I started reading. I started, exercising, eating a lot cleaner. But ever since I quit drinking, I've had that sugar craving, right? But the biggest thing I learned was building a support network of people that are going to support you, uplift you, and encourage you. And, the people that are going to lend that ear. I've been to over 100 doctor's appointments, 77 days in rehab, 45 addiction appointments, 10 psychologists, 10 psychiatrists, 8 different meds. But I have that support network of people. I was seeing my doctor every month. I was seeing an addiction counselor every 2 weeks for a bit. I saw a psychologist and a psychiatrist. I had that friend that would always text me every day. And, it's building up that support network of people that are going to be there for you.
Mm-hmm. Well, and trying to just, there is this stigma about mental health and disorders. And again, and for a man, you're strong, you just got to be a badass and a strong dude. Yeah. And really, and being vulnerable, like all those things that you said, men have a hard time doing that. I have a hard time doing that, but men especially, have a hard time being vulnerable and showing their feelings and talking about their feelings. And like you said, admitting that maybe you need some help.
Yeah, for sure. I lived by that man up stigma for a very long time, to where it was changing my internal dialogue. And I was saying some pretty rough things to myself, where I was working at a mill and I'd be working across from somebody and I'd be sitting there wondering, am I going to make it? And then I'd be like, you're such a whatever, you're weak, you're pathetic, you're a failure. I'd literally forget the person's name sitting right across from me because I'm just so out to lunch. I was very lucky. I never hurt anybody where I worked, because I worked with forklifts and a 400-degree press. And we were driving the forklifts around inside at a high speed, ripping around corners, right? Very lucky I never hurt anybody, but my internal dialogue was awful. And it's what you think, what you say, and what you believe about yourself can either make or break you, because the person that you spend the most time with in this life is you. Mm-hmm. And it's up here, and it all starts with you, and it all starts up there. So it's when you beat yourself up every day and don't talk about it, there's nobody that's going to be able to help you.
Mm-hmm. Right. Except for you. Except for you. But again, when you're, but when you're telling yourself that you're a loser and you can't even help yourself, it's difficult. Again, I've heard it, I've seen it, I've lived around it. I will say, there wasn't you mentioned your parents at one time that they were able to take you to the hospital, but I know that these type of addictions and disorders really do impact relationships. And, this is, again, a little off. Well, I talked about relationships again, just asking for you to think about that. But, how did everything that was going on in your life, impact your relationship with your folks, going away, living with a different family, being, wrapped up in these addictions? How did it impact that, if it did, and have things improved, or where are you at with those kind of things?
Well, I moved away. I moved to a lot of different places. I'd go move away, get in trouble, get fired from a job. I'd just go, I was a very good bartender. I came to me, I liked doing it. So I was a very quick learner, and anywhere I went in and started, I'd be good right away. So I could get jobs easy, but I was getting fired from them because I was drinking. Right. But then I'd move around, get another job. And I didn't really see my family much over 8 years. Even when I lived in the same town and bartended and ran a nightclub, I didn't really go and see them. I wanted to stick to myself. I very much liked isolation. But, when I moved home at 28, it was rocky. My dad didn't really know what to do with me. He was an army son, right? His dad was in the army. So his upbringing was a lot different than mine was. So, and I'm very lucky that my mom let me live in her basement, and I'm very lucky she never kicked me out. So, it was rocky, right? But she didn't, I think she saw how hard I was trying, to get sober. Because I could go 1-2 months, 3 months sober, but then I just keep falling down that rabbit hole because I didn't know how to live life. But, our relationship's better now. And they're proud of me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, they should be. Again, as a parent of 4 kids and learning about boundaries and things like that, sometimes that's what, as parents, we want to be able to provide that safe space for our kids so that we can be there and encouraging them and kind of watching over them. And there's other times that it's like, it would be better if we just kicked them out and we have to kick them out, because there's both sides of those coins, because.
For sure. I saw a judge do a talk on YouTube. I don't know how he linked up to it, but he talked about his son. And because if my mom would have kicked me out, no one would ever see me again. I would have left out. I was this close to leaving by myself and going to live on the streets because that appealed to me way more because I wouldn't disappoint anybody. They could move on with their life and I could just be left alone with my thoughts. But he talked about his son who was an addict. And he's like, I had 2 choices. I could kick my son out and watch him die in the streets, or I could let him die downstairs if he was going to overdose. It's like, I'd rather him overdose downstairs and try to help him instead of seeing him overdose on the streets and die by himself. I found that very interesting because there are 2 approaches you can take to it. And some will work for others and some won't. Like if my mom would have kicked me out, I was giving up on myself. I couldn't, and I had some friends give up on me, right? If my family would have given up on me, I don't know what I would have done. Mm-hmm. But there's also some people that needed to be kicked out by their parents because when they got kicked out, it clicked for them, right? So there's one point, it depends. Like, is that user trying to get better or are they just using and stealing from you? Mm-hmm. Or is he sitting down there, he has his slip ups, but he's not doing anything harmful. Kind of, it's a very gray area, right? Mm-hmm. And it just basically comes down to the parents, but it's the healthy boundaries.
Right. And it's, and I've seen it just from my position as a parent. Sometimes it is like, I've seen too much of this indecision, like this, talking about how bad things are. But it's like, okay, so what are you going to do? Again, I coach people to have their own business and help people in wellness. Sometimes they're not moving forward. I'm like, okay, well, what are you willing to do? Or like, are you going to make a decision or are you just going to complain about how bad things are? And I think sometimes when parents set that boundary or say, you know what, by this time you're out, sometimes it can force that person, that child to finally say, okay, I guess I have to make a decision. But if I live, because I've heard this from other parents, if I live in the comfort of my parents' home, that's great. But sometimes we're not doing our kids any favor, letting them live here, if we're not, again, helping them, encouraging them to make a decision to move forward in their life. So I definitely think there's 2 sides of it. And, everybody's got to make their own decisions with that as a parent and things. But it's tough. It's tough as I'm sure with little kids, there's like little problems and we can kind of control what they're eating and doing and things like that. But the kids get bigger, bigger issues, and we can't really sit them down and make them do what we want them to do.
Well, and he's 5. He doesn't eat his dinner. And I'm telling him he was going to sleep outside.
Right. Right. He's probably going to eat his dinner, right? Yeah. Maybe he likes to go camping and sleep outside, right?
Outside, sweet.
Yeah.
Man.
Right. Yeah. Well, you've moved on to, again, being an advocate and helping other people and a coach, and talk a little bit about that, like who you help, how you help them, and like kind of what that's become for you as you're, helping people be their strongest versions of themselves.
Well, I've actually helped a variety of different people. It was one person was, they needed to quit drinking, and the big thing was acceptance and forgiveness. They need to forgive themselves for stupid things they've done and see their self-worth. I've had a person, just wanted to improve their lifestyle, different perspectives, implement new strategies. I've had another person that I did a survey and she had a lot of resistance to it. And, she's reached out and said, I have resistance to this. I need to do it. And she started she went back to school so she can, upgrade and have a new job. And, another girl, I remember week 6, she started crying because she finally realized her self-worth. And another guy, he started to put himself first, his needs first. He had his self-care, not his needs, but his self-care. And he's starting to show up better in his personal and his professional life. And, a lot of the people I coach, it's healthy boundaries, it's procrastination, it's self-care, putting themselves first. And, so I've had a variety of people, and it's pretty cool to know that I can kind of coach around that. But, my ideal clients, that person that really wants to make a transformation, that is stuck in living their own life, they want to move forward.
Yeah. And I learned about that self-care too. Again, being a mom of a, daughter that struggled or still struggles with a mental health disorder, trying to take care of her and forgetting about myself. I mean, I learned firsthand that I have to put myself on the front burner and put that oxygen mask on first and take care of myself and figure out how to, again, that whole compassionate self-care. It is so important, and it can be so uncomfortable too, because we're not used to doing that. And I'm a nurse, so I like to help people. I like to problem solve. That's what I do, is take care of everybody else. And I had to turn around and take care of myself. And it's the best thing we can do for ourselves.
Yeah. If you're at 100% or 90%, then you can be 100 or 90% for somebody else. Like, let's say you're at 50%, your 100% you're giving them is not actually 100%. It's only 100% of the effort or what you have left in you. Right? So you might think you're giving them your best, but how's your energy level? How's your mood level? Right? Like, are you actually giving 100% of your capacity if you're not at 100%? So when you start to put your self-care first, saying no to things that you don't want to do, sleeping in every now and then, when someone says, hey, come, I need you right now. I'm being like, no, I actually have to do this. So I got to take care of me for a second. And having that bath, right? When you start to do all those things, you really start to show up better for other people, because then your attitude starts to be better. You're not as irritable as easy. You're happier, right? You're refreshed. And, I was going too hard in the beginning. I was getting up at 4:30, doing my stuff during the day, and I was going to serve at night 5-6 days a week. And I was also going to the gym 5, 6, 7 days a week, and trying to do schooling and volunteering and being a dad. And, and I was burning out. And now it's just, I sleep until 6 or 7, no matter what. I don't need to get up that early. I got to organize my days better then.
Yeah. You got to find the things that, you don't want to go to the extreme to the other side, you got to find the balance that works for you. And I totally agree. I've talked in other talks before that I have to fill my cup up pretty much to overflowing. It's got to be overflowing in order for me to really show up good for other people. I mean, I love how you said that. You're giving 100% of yourself, but if you're not at 100%,
you're giving 100% of your 50%.
Right. And that's why I was so excited again to talk to this gal about these amino acids. I'm like, man, because I can't figure it out during this whole COVID time. Like, I'm not sleeping well. And I'm somebody that could go to sleep the whole night, no problems at all. And I have been just trying all kinds of things. And she said, this might help with this and this and this. I'm like, okay, let's try it. Because again, because people will say, what, you're good. I'm like, yeah, I am good, but I know that I could be better. I know that I don't think I'm 100%. So I'm always looking for that next thing that might just kind of amplify things up.
Well, you know what? I was doing pre-workout 6-7 days a week in the morning. I have a coffee when I went to work at 4, but I'd have like a coffee with 2 shots of espresso. And then I'd have a couple more coffees while I was there, because I'm doing like 156,000 steps per week. And, I quit caffeine. I have a natural pre-workout. That's like ginseng and stuff like that. And I mix it with MCT oil and greens powder, and some honey. And I don't drink coffee. I have the odd green tea, but basically I 99% got rid of all caffeine in my life. I don't drink pop, and I feel way better.
Yeah.
And I time my vitamins too.
Yep. Yeah. Those are all good things, again, because sometimes those things can become, can become crutches. It's not a drug per se, but it is, it can be a crutch, those caffeine and sugar and things like that. So that's a discussion for another day and things like that. So, as we wrap this up, where can people find you, Justin, if they want to connect with you, if they want to work with you, just kind of follow you, where can people find you?
Well, they can find me on my website at www.justinbrien.com. Email me personally at justin@justinbrien.com. You can find me on Instagram, justinbrien19. Send me a message. Let's chat. Let's see if we're a good fit to work together. Let me know what your biggest takeaway from this conversation was, or what you would like to work on, or what you've implemented to change your life around. And don't forget to leave Moira a 5-star rating.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, that's a great way to wrap it up. I appreciate that. Hopefully when you hear this, I'll have my journal out. I was going to mention about journaling. You talked about journaling and writing things down. That has become such a big part of my morning routine, and my daily routine is getting my thoughts out of my noggin and down. And so I have created a Journey to Joy journal. My assistant and I are working on that together. So hopefully by the time this episode comes out, we'll have that, and you can look in the show notes for that. Otherwise, again, everything will be in the show notes so you can get a hold of Justin. But I really appreciate you just being here and being open and vulnerable and sharing your story. Again, I've heard so many over the years, and they're not always pretty. And there is a lot of, I hear from many that shame, that regret and things like that. But I really give you kudos for showing up every day for you, for your kids, for your girlfriend or wife. I'm not sure where she's at with, or you're at with that, but the gal that you're making a family with. And I think that's great because, again, that's what we need to do is just continue to make this world a better place for ourselves, but also those that will go along after we're long gone. So thanks for being here, Justin. I really do appreciate it. And reach out to Justin. And again, write a 5-star review, share these podcasts. There's nothing better than you really can do. I love that review, but please share this with somebody that you might think needs to hear it, and go on and make it a great day. Thanks for listening. If you like this podcast, head over to iTunes and leave me a 5-star review. Share it with others and make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a thing. I've got a tribe over on Facebook, so head over there and search for Juggling the Chaos of Recovery Podcast Tribe. And do you know somebody who has a story to share, a story of recovery and hope? Please let me know, as I'd love to feature them as a guest on one of these next upcoming podcasts. And perhaps you're looking for a community of like-minded, collaborative, and supportive people who cheer each other on as we strive to improve our lives. If that sounds like something you've been looking for, schedule some time with me. You'll find the links in the show notes. Let's talk, and let me help you find your way. And I'm here to tell you that you're worth it.